And who's buying, who's selling? Our regular favourite here, Gemma Dale from nabtrade. Good afternoon, Gemma. Thanks for joining us as always. Wow, with all these headlines this week, is that stirring up your clients to get going on the platform?
Yeah, it's generally the time of year when everyone's a little bit quiet. They're not terribly interested in markets. They are hoping to get away for a holiday, perhaps this year more so than others. But it does, if there's some news, it will drag them out, right? People will absolutely leap all over an opportunity. And we had two this week in that group of stocks that people will definitely get excited about if something happens. So Woolies has a downgrade, tells everyone that supply chain issues are very real and they are hitting hard. And down 8%, that is the kind of number our guys really like. 3 or 4%, they might have a nibble, but 8% looks really good. So they were all over that. That was a 90+% buy. Both, and this is what's always most interesting, both by value, but also by the number of trades. So often you'll see smaller traders jumping in on some of these things, but the bigger ones might be selling or trimming if they're a little bit nervous about the long-term prognosis. We saw everyone all over this. On Tuesday, they were really excited. And then CSL was the other one. That is, I find it super interesting. CSL 2 years ago was what we call one of our high conviction stocks. It was only held by about 10% of our total investor base, which is not exactly a large proportion for what at that time was pretty close to being Australia's largest company. It's been around for a very long time. And so we had a small number of people who bought early and held on passionately all the way through, making enormous amounts of money. And we had a lot of other people who wouldn't touch it because it was way too expensive for them. Since COVID, it got incredible. It was up around $350 pre-COVID, hit really hard, down around 250, bounced up and down. It was up above 300 just a few weeks ago. 272 yesterday was the buy price. It was well above a 90% buy, and the volumes were absolutely enormous. Huge buying. And yet it wasn't exactly the first opportunity people have had to buy CSL at 272 in the last 12 months, right? They've had several opportunities to get it at that price. So it's amazing to me that clearly the news, not just the price, was driving the appetite.
Yeah, we've had some mixed views from our analysts this week about Woolworths and CSL, we have to say. So in terms of another big one you've mentioned is our friends Macquarie Group. Now, speaking of an expensive stock, what are your traders looking at?
Yeah, so Fortescue, Macquarie and CSL were our three big high conviction stocks, the one that were only held by a small number of people, but they were really passionate about it. CSL is much more widely held now, not least because of all the buying we saw yesterday. Macquarie, really tight base, really small number proportionately to the wider investor audience we have because it's too expensive, right? They just won't touch something over $200. At 207 yesterday, they were selling like mad. So over a 90% sell. We very rarely see a sell that's that high conviction. It has to be, frankly, quite an eye-watering number that a price hits for people to sell that aggressively. So clearly, even those people who love Macquarie very much feel that 207's maybe a bit rich even for them. It's time to let go of a little bit.
Yeah, well, speaking of expensive, what about those massive guys in the US? Then, of course, the big FANG stocks. What's the latest there?
Look, it's still all about Tesla on international markets. I'd love to say it was something else. We had a little spike and a little run of other things for a while there. Enphase Energy was our sort of huge stock in terms of the volumes that were going through it, but only a small number of individuals who are participating in that. It's still Tesla. It's still a buy. People love it. It doesn't seem to be attached to the contrarian nature of our investors. They're very contrarian on the ASX. Comes to Tesla, they're all over. It doesn't matter what the price is, really. I mean, they're pretty indifferent. Apple's seen a bit of trimming, which is interesting. We haven't seen that for a while. Apple was the big favorite on international markets for quite a while, and then Tesla came along and kind of blew it out of the water. So we've seen a little bit of selling in Apple. It's still a buy, a net buy overall, but relatively small. Tesla's a very strong buy, but they're selling Pfizer. That's quite interesting to me. We've seen quite a bit of interest, obviously, in the vaccine manufacturers, but when you're seeing the UK with over 80,000 cases in a day, to be selling the vaccine manufacturer seems quite fascinating to me.
And speaking of fascinating, of course, it's a week till Christmas. Do people start putting their phones down as we head into that crucial holiday season?
Look, it's always quiet. It's a really quiet time of year. What you don't see at Christmas is the kind of consistent volumes that you see through the year where people are repositioning their portfolio. So the banks this week, there's been heavy selling in NAB, really heavy selling in NAB, and really aggressive buying in Westpac. But at volumes are much lower than we would have seen 6 months ago. Throughout the year, people go see their financial planners, they'll rethink their portfolios. I mean, we're mostly self-directed investors, and they'll be making decisions about repositioning. They'll nibble at a price here and there. Christmas, they tend not to do that anymore. They've got better things to do, which is good, unless there's a massive price movement, in which case they're all over it. So it tends to be only very dramatic moves that get people moving. You mentioned the iron ore price earlier. We do still see volumes in Fortescue. That's the one thing that we will continue to see. If the iron ore price is moving, so will the traders.
And of course, the other end of the question, of course, is when do the volumes start picking up again? Is it sort of like the second week of Jan?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Last year, we saw quite surprisingly high, not just volumes, but also new accounts in January, which I would estimate is a sort of a New Year's resolution effect. People who are like, that's it, this is the year I'm going to start trading. All right, this is the year I'm going to start trading. They came to market really early in January last year. It was quite surprising. But we were coming off the back of the COVID rush. When I say off the back of it, I mean it kept going all the way through this year. So we kept seeing new traders and new investors, and we saw a lot of ETF buying in January. That was clearly a New Year's resolution effect going, I'm going to invest for the first time, and I'm going to buy the ASX 200, which is what we see consistently when people open an account and make that first foray into markets and into investing. So I would anticipate we will see more of that again. But you assume at some point we've seen everyone who wants to come to market, right? There's been plenty of press about what's been happening in share markets over the last 2 years, and I feel at some point it will slow down. And the only thing that will dramatically lift things is a collapse. A collapse is when everyone gets excited and starts rushing into the market.
Yeah, let's not talk about black swans yet, Gemma. I'm not ready for that either. Let's just hope for a peaceful and COVID-free Christmas. And speaking of which, we hope you do too, Gemma. Absolute favourite here at ausbiz. Enjoy your day.
It's wonderful speaking to you guys. Have a great break.